Oh, that's how we can do it.
What is this?
Episode 6. Episode 6.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Ooh.
thank you for
Welcome
tuning in to the
to
Meditative Monkeys podcast,
episode
episode 6.
6.
6.
Ah,
Steven Zorbas, how are you today?
I'm good, Benjamin. How are you?
I'm doing well, really well.
How's the family?
Family is fantastic. Keanu is crawling forward and now on to the next thing, crawling up and over and looking to get to objects, above his
Can he
eye
make
line.
can he go up the couch? Like, can he prop up?
Bro, yesterday he not up the couch like that yet, but yesterday, because he'll intentionally put himself in situations that are challenging. Like he'll see. Generally, it's like
Question. Do
yeah.
you train in front of him at all?
Yeah.
So he probably.
Dude, the other day I was doing hands. He's into peekaboo now. The other day I was doing handstands and he fucking loved it. He was in his pram. I would go upside down, come back up and look at him. And he was like, ha.
That's so sick.
And it's so good because normally if handstands are so frustrating, like
Sure.
my tendency is to get out of them and just be like, fuck. But this time I'm getting down. I look at my son and he's like, ha. And I'm like, ha.
That's actually pretty wicked, man.
It was so good. Awesome. So he puts himself in
cool.
difficult situations where he'll see an object that he wants to get to, like say it's, one of our phones lying down. And if something's in the way, he won't go around. He'll like.
Does he know the phone and stuff like already? Like I'm sure he sees you guys text and like he knows you guys use it for something.
Yeah. He knows that it's. I think he knows that it's an interesting, shiny, like colorful thing. Yeah. I don't think he gets the function or anything, but he
sure.
Yeah, he's attracted towards lights and shiny things and colorful things.
Yeah.
But yeah, if my arm's on the ground, he'll figure out how to crawl over my arm rather than go around it. And the other day I had my arm like high and he pulled himself up to standing. Like and then he fell down straight away, but he was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna start standing now.
That's it. Use my new abilities and my new strength to just push limits.
It's so goal oriented. Like he's looking at an object in the distance and it's about getting to that thing. It's about doing something new. It's just that it's not. He's not thinking like, I want to crawl now. I want to stand up. I want to walk. He's just thinking, I want to get to that. I want to be able to explore and move around more. So I'm gonna demand that my body do that.
Yeah, and I think there's something like pretty like weirdly like poetic in that, and like just like a lesson to take. Like even if you're doing a squat week in, week out, multiple times a set, a rep. Why not try and push your body into places where it hasn't been yet? Asking you questions, continue asking questions, Especially it's like you see how fast progression happens there, but it's so incremental, it kind of looks like nothing's happening. Yeah. But then you realize like, bam, like it just happens. Bam. Now he's like pulling himself up. Soon he'll be walking and we'll be talking about it. Exactly. And I find that is like, if you keep asking yourself questions, which we try and talk about every week, but if you keep asking yourself questions, it actually weirdly happens like that, right?
Yeah. It's so amazing. And it's just, I think especially for skill work, things for movements that are not, where you're not limited by strength or flexibility, but you're just limited by technique. It really speaks to me about how the valuable practice is in the repetition and the daily repetition. Because with walking or crawling, he's had the strength for a while to be able to push himself up and to move forward and whatnot. But I think a lot of it was just it seemed like a coordination issue. He wasn't quite syncing up the correct contractions at the right time.
He was still loading that area.
Yeah.
And then once he got strong enough and comfortable enough there, then he's like, okay, I can now traction upwards with this crawling.
Yeah, but he had to figure out it wasn't just brute strength. It's like it's using the strength in a coordinated way in the correct sequence. And to get there, it's a lot of trial and error. It's like he tries it one way and fails, tries another one. But the efforts are constant. It's all day, every day. He's like on his stomach. And he gets upset if he's not able to practice.
What else does he have to do?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And that's the best part about it, right?
Drink milk and sleep and fill up his nappy. And
like the commercial.
Which one was that?
Drink milk, love life. Yeah, I think they like had the whole like songs opera like,
or like the Canadian Dairy Farmers Association,
something like that. No, yeah, back in the day when they probably like a 2000s commercial.
Yeah, exactly. It's just
one of those gold ones.
Yeah, he moves around, he drinks milk, he loves life. It's yeah, family's good, everyone's great. How are
And
you?
envious. Everything's fantastic. Like we're talking about, we have a couple socks hanging here. Those are
Yeah,
my hockey socks, just drying out
yes,
from last Thursday.
thematic
Yeah,
in
last
context.
that's it. Last Thursday was the first time I played hockey again in probably what 4 or 5 months, give or take,
Okay,
since
yeah,
since March, February, March, something like that. We ended our season,
yeah,
and or well, I guess right when COVID started, so March. We're in like 4 months or so now,
yeah.
and I was working out the whole time, body weight stuff, calisthenics, movement stuff. We had the backyard gym, so we're like pushing weights too with Alex, my cousin.
Yeah.
And we did like some stick handling here and there, some like hockey drill stuff. And I was just talking to him and I'm like, dude, we're gonna go back. We're gonna be so much more fit than anyone else. You're not doing anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, did I not realize that this was actually probably the first 4 months ever in my life where I haven't had any sort of like sport activity for cardio.
Mm,
So it's never registered in my head because I've never just been away from it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that kind of just didn't register in my head that I would have some, cardiovascular issues.
You just took it for granted.
Yeah, so I took it for granted. So Thursday comes along, and on top of that, not only did I take it for granted, but I got cocky,
Mm,
and that always bites you in the ass. So it was Sophia's birthday last week, and on Thursday we went for dinner, and I decided to have steak, and steak was about 7 o'clock
yeah.
and hockey was 9:30. And I'm like, should I go for the 8 ounce or the 12 ounce? I'm like, let's go for the 12
I've been
ounce.
training hard.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, I'm gonna be so much better than everyone else. Have the 12 ounce, get the hockey, change, feeling good, step on the ice, do 2 laps, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, this is gonna be a shit show today. And what kind of hit me too, and the funny part is because I just started picking up hockey again, like what, three or so years ago.
Yeah.
So soccer is like a little different story because I know how to kind of maximize efficiency,
Hmm.
even when my cardio is not there, my physicality is not there, because I know positioning and stuff like that. You're just accustomed to like being able, as we talked about earlier on, like it's not that your cardio necessarily gets better; you become more efficient.
Yeah.
My brain correlates with my body that much better to be efficient.
Yeah.
At hockey, I'm not like there yet. I'm still like kind of like not I don't want to say forcing when I'm playing, but like I'm kind of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Soccer's a little bit more feeling about it,
Yeah.
right? And it was like really daunting how like tired I got, and it didn't help that one of our guys didn't show up, so we had one sub on the first time back after like 4 months. But yeah, definitely hit me like a truck and inspired me to invest in a bike and start going on bike rides now.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to get the heart rate up and work the hips and the quads. I'm not a fan of running, as we know, but
I know I asked you this before when we talked about it, but how did the other people go? The other players go as well? Like, were you relatively in poor shape, or was everyone on a pretty even playing field?
everyone was gassed. Everyone was on a pretty even playing field. But the funny part is like, so then there's guys that are like visibly looking out of shape, like that are like out of shape guys.
Yeah.
But back to the efficiency from just like movement patterns,
Yeah.
they've been playing their whole lives.
Right.
Right, so their skating ability, their stick handling ability, their shooting ability is like so much less effort to gain so much more out of it,
Mm,
that they can still kind of like, don't get me wrong, they were tired, they were gassed by the end, but like their gas is still functional.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm like looking literally like Bambi on the like last like 10 minutes, like actually. And I'm like, prior to like COVID, like I would consider myself like pretty strong, good skater, like one of like the better skaters on my team and everything.
Yeah.
And honestly, by the end of this, I felt like I've never skated before. It was just such
Wow.
like it was a good kick in the face, but it was, yeah, a kick in the face.
So what are you going to do about it? What's the plan moving forward?
Well, plans, grab the bike and hop in cardio with the cycling
Yeah.
and sprinting. I like sprinting, so I'll sprint because I find it's better for the joints. But anything long distance, I find is too daunting on the body.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
giving your body time to adjust. You're not giving your body time to, just your that consistent overwork and that tiredness. I find you just fall into bad patterns and kind of keep that going,
Yeah.
versus being able to keep that aligned, or a sprint nice and upright, you know, nice and strong flex, keep that pattern, run it through, and then relax. Or
Yeah.
cycling, you still have that time where you can relax, and you know what I mean. Swimming, same thing. You have that gliding, but I find that consistent running breeds a lot more issues than it than the benefits.
Yeah. I try to get a run in once a week now, and I enjoy it. I don't know exactly why I do it.
Hmm.
It's multifaceted, like a lot of these
Sure.
things. It's partly with the hope of cardio benefits, and I measure that by the distance I'm able to go. I'm pushing it by going further and further.
Are you
Um,
trying to like do Ks every day, or are you
Not
doing
every
more
day. No, I do this once a week.
or once a
Just once
week?
a week.
Sorry,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
are you gonna look for like long distance? Are you trying to get to like 10, 20?
I don't have a specific goal with it right now. I kind of have a few. I have a few specific goals in my training that I'm really focused on, and I I think there's a limit to that. So I try not. I'm not overwhelming myself with specific goals, and I'm just
Mhm.
running kind of just. I think just to see if it would help overall the rest of my
Sure.
training, and then I do enjoy the feeling of getting into that flow and getting a
Mhm.
rhythm going.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's not as comfortable as like I much prefer swimming as cardio,
Sure.
which I've also just started back again recently. But I
Yeah.
find that um, yeah, road run. I really like the peace and the solitude because I do it at night when there's no traffic on the road and the
Oh,
air is
nice. You're a
fresh.
nighttime runner. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Cool.
when I like to do it. Maybe even after dinner or just before dinner to work up an appetite.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
So I'm assuming you're operating more on feel than actual like distance. Like you're pushing yourself, but it's kind of like you're seeing what you feel. I'm sure if you get to a point where you're feeling like it's hindering you, you'll cut back and everything,
yeah,
which I think is important.
a lot of it's subjective. It's a fun. This is
Yeah.
a funny topic because there's a lot of maybe a controversial one about
Yeah.
whether training should be measured by objective measurable standards like the
Yeah.
numbers that you're hitting
Yeah.
it can be written down, or whether it can be done through feel. And the sort of objectivists would argue that the subjective feeling of how something is going
Yeah.
for you, like it's fine, they'll say there's nothing wrong with that, but you can't gauge progress based on that. You can't tell
Yeah.
whether your workouts are effective or not just based on how they feel. Whereas on the other end of things, the subjectivists, the people that like to prefer to feel their way through, they would argue the complete opposite. They would say,
Yeah.
you know, the measures, the numbers aren't necessarily a measurement of progress because my numbers may be going up, but I may be feeling worse and worse. So
Sure.
my training program may not be
Yeah.
effective. So I think
Yeah.
from my conclusion from that is that it really depends on what your goal is.
Of course.
You know, is your goal to hit a certain number, or is your goal to feel a certain way, or is it a combination of two?
And I think when we factor that into the what people and what I've asked myself, and I'm sure what you've asked yourself is, you got to ask, are you looking to be just healthy, or are you looking to go sport specific? Because a lot of
Exactly.
people don't realize that like weightlifting, powerlifting, you know, certain areas, CrossFit like that, they're a little bit geared towards more sport specific
Yeah.
than actual, you know, health in itself.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to kind of figure out what your kind of specific goals are. And I think if it's for health, it is, you know, don't get me wrong, it's going to benefit you in either which way to have that intuition on how you feel and how you're feeling and how you're going to perform and how to perform and everything like that. Right. But, you know, you can, when you tend to push yourself for the numbers and you have goals like that, you tend to throw feel out the window sometimes. And, you know,
Yeah.
that's personal experience. Right.
And like all things, it's both. You know, it's maybe
Yeah.
finding that middle ground. At least that's what I
Of
believe.
course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's very interesting kind of dualism, and I've gone from one end to the other in my own practice. Like sometimes
Yeah.
really focusing on numbers and sometimes just on feel. But yeah, I think the most benefit comes from that middle path. And like you were saying, I actually think this is one of the most underrated perspectives and just underrated pieces of you know I don't even know what you call it, but just that it's all about what the goal is. It's all about, it all
Yeah.
depends on what your aim is, what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
And a lot of different training methods will be introduced or talked about as if this is the way, this will get you gains, or this will help you
Yeah.
feel the best. And we need to keep in mind the context, which is all things that are done, whether you see them as good or bad, is entirely dependent on what the goal is, because it's all relative to that goal. If it's
Yes.
getting you towards your goal, it's good. If it's taking you further from your goal, it's bad. It
Yeah.
actually doesn't matter what the thing is. It needs to have some context and relationship to what you're aiming for.
Of course. And it could be that even it could be something that is like a detrimental goal, but if it's getting you to your goal, you know, like
That's
if
so
you're
interesting, man. Yeah.
if your goal is to lift as heavy as you can, and you know that potentially that's going to hurt your body, but you're continually progressing and you get to where you want to go, but you know your body doesn't last. You know, your goal wasn't necessarily health, and you knew it was going to be detrimental in the future, but you got to your goal. Let's say
You,
I get to 1,000 pound deadlift, right? Like
yeah.
Larry Wheels, but like let's say Larry Wheels like wanting to lift as heavy as he can all
Cool.
the time and push numbers. Like when this guy's elbows go, I'm sure he knew to a certain extent, or his knees or his hips, you know, like I'm sure he knew to probably most of the extent what his future life is going to be just by looking at
Yeah.
someone like Ronnie Coleman, right? But again, his goals, right? It's not that well, I would say detrimental, but he reached his goals.
Bro,
You
imagine you did an experiment, and I'm sure this has been done, where
mm-hmm.
you're training not to get stronger, but you're training to discover your body's own tolerance
Yeah.
for stress. So let's say you were actually some sort of, masochist, you were trying to hurt yourself, but you got off on hurting yourself a bit, and
Yeah.
you were really interested in discovering how far would I have to push my joints before my joint would start to lose function. Like what?
Yeah.
Because maybe that's actually useful information. Maybe
Sure.
if you're depending on your lifestyle, maybe it's useful for you to know exactly how far you can push yourself before you hit breaking point. And the only way to discover this is to sometimes
Hit
go past
breaking
that
point.
line, is to hit
Yeah.
breaking point. But then
Yeah.
there's a great saying that a trainer taught me a few years ago, which is when you walk into a dark room, the only way to discover where the center of that room is to first find the walls.
Yeah. I
And
agree
it's
with that.
so imagine if you had that goal of I want to discover my own body's tolerance. Well, now you're going to train in a way where maybe you're doing very heavy loading in very irregular positions at very high volume with very little
Yeah.
rest. And people might look at that and say, this is all crazy. None of this is good. But then that guy would turn around and say, it's good for me because my goal is to see how far I can push myself with this type of work.
and
So
because he's doing that, he's created strength, knowledge, ability in those ranges. So for someone that has a different goal and they're looking at that saying that's not good, for someone that is their goal, they've created a connectivity, a chain for that, so they're good. You know what I
exactly,
mean? Like you'll
exactly.
get that all the time. Like I go do dips at the gym now, right?
Mm,
Like when I'm at the gym and I'll do dips and I'll go full, like all the way through, right? Create the hollow body, arch through, get the chest over, actually pull my elbows through and be in like a deep, deep dip.
yeah,
You know, get the biceps tucked, elongate the triceps, get all the chains working together so I can keep myself stable in that motion.
yeah.
And people try to tell me, oh, dude, watch your shoulders, watch your shoulders, watch your shoulders. I've fixed my shoulder injury that I had for so long, and I've strengthened more than I've ever felt in my life. And I feel generally no shoulder pain. And all these people complain about their shoulders.
And what's it been a product of though? What you're saying you feel so much better now, but why? How? Through what kind of training?
Just kind of like that,
Yeah.
pushing my range of motion. See, I don't want to go to a breaking point because I don't want to get hurt.
Right.
So
Yeah,
what I
most
kind
people
of
don't.
found, yeah, exactly, and like yeah, for science, for science, but I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
doing. I'm doing solo science right now. That's
Sure.
it. Like not world science, and I find like hitting that like 90%, or I guess we can call it breaking point, right? Because breaking point doesn't necessarily have to mean injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think breaking point could mean reaching your personal limitations of keeping that chain connected.
It could be a mental breaking point too, the point at
100.
which you realize you want to give up, that you want to stop.
Yeah. Oh, if we're certainly if you're pushing certain ways or even pushing range of motion, it's all mental at the end of the day too, right? Because the reason why you want to stop is maybe your shoulder feels like it's in the wrong position because you don't know how to correlate that properly.
Yeah.
So you lost support. You lost that support, that connectivity, right? I found that pushing that like 80, 85, 90% range, and then sometimes you have to push into that form breaking point, not injury breaking point, but that form breaking point, and then finding that last little percentage. Like, why do I break there? you know, this whole part of the range of motion feels smooth. And then I get to here and all of a sudden I collapse. Like, what is happening
Yeah.
to
And you
make that?
can only understand a situation if you're actually in that, you know, reproducing that scenario and
Yeah.
trying to and actually looking at it.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I'm trying to bring, doing all the group classes now. You know what I mean? And stuff like that.
So
And that's what,
just for context for the listeners, you just started a new position of running group classes, group training
yeah.
classes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In the process now, they're opening early October and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing just some outdoor like free stuff just to like spread awareness and everything like that. And so I was just walking around, I was doing the class setting, and you know, with COVID and everything, you can't do the one-on-one touching, and you know, it's very hard to tell someone how to move their body. A lot of times I find without giving them physical cues or guiding them through, right? Like we're talking about touching the walls, like
Yeah.
helping them touch the walls. You know, they're in a dark room and they don't even know how to move. They're scared
Yeah.
to move. You know, you're kind of like, hey, I've been in this dark room. There, come walk with me. Let me show you. This
Yeah.
wall's
Like
here.
maybe you grab their hand and pull it out to demonstrate that if you're
Sure.
looking around, you want to have your hands in front
Yeah,
of you, not going head first, for example.
exactly. Have one touch here, one cue here, and like help pull the hand and say, you know, this needs to stay here as we're extending here, just to build those connectivities that they don't know how to build yet.
Yeah.
So I figured the solution today for one of the ladies, I told her, I was like, you know, these movements that we did today, go home and film a couple of them once or twice and just look at yourself, right? So next time you come, you'll have a little bit of a mental correlation of how you look and how you feel in that position.
Yeah.
And then we can start building on that because we can't do touch, right? So I think visual is going to be a very important mitigating factor.
Dude, that's so huge. That's been such a big revelation for me over the past few years.
Yeah.
That there's a disparity between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing in many
It's
cases,
crazy
and
sometimes.
it requires that awareness to actually fill that gap and to get
Yeah.
things actually working as you're aiming for.
Yeah. And I learned the value in that a lot working with you because
Mm,
you would film all the time.
yeah,
And the hard part there is you have to be looking, right? And I think that's why I knew filming was important before, but I was only looking for like, are you pushing through the heels, your bum back straight? You know, not to say that my form was bad before, but it was like I wasn't thinking in like a global aspect of like everything working at once. How is it manipulating together? And like, how can you pinpoint certain things? It was like, oh, back straight, sitting back, went down, came up, not too much butt wink, you know, you're
yeah,
fine. Right. So it's like filming was like a value, but not like too much of a value. As soon as I didn't see my knees tracking a certain position, I was like, okay, I don't need to film that anymore. But understanding now, like going through that process of filming with you and understanding that there's always little things that you could be working on and seeing and how important those are. And like, again, going back to feel, how they make you, how like working on making those movements better makes you feel. And personally for me, and I guess you can attest to it too, because you feel pretty good,
yeah.
how you feel in the long run trying to make those better and clean them up and looking at the video, you realize how valuable it is.
Yeah, and it's been really cool to see with the online coaching that I've been doing that. So basically, the context is that I started filming myself a lot more when I hired an online
Mm-hmm.
coach. And then I realized through that process that it's not so much, I mean, it's both about your teachers being able to see you and give you feedback, but it is also as much about being able to see yourself and getting
Yeah.
into that
Yeah.
practice. Because when you start to see yourself in video, it's yeah, it's revealing. And man, it could be like working on handstands, especially. I've been really getting back into them quite
Yeah.
seriously, and I have to actually be careful, I find, because I'll do a handstand. I think it feels great. It feels like I'm getting a lot
Sure.
more connection. I'm getting the right connection that I'm looking
Yep.
for. But then I'll look at the video and I'll see that it's in a banana, for example.
Yeah.
And it's so demoralizing because I'm like, I thought I was doing
See,
great.
I have an idea though with that, right?
Mm,
I don't necessarily, you know how we talk about sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward.
yeah,
I think if you feel great, it's important to realize that you've been in that same position and not felt great,
exactly.
right? So now you have a better correlation of that position and then seeing the video again. Now it's going to be easier to manipulate your body of that position because maybe you did get a better connectivity somewhere else. and it didn't necessarily pull you to where you want to be, but you have more support in that area now.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit more to being able to help you to shift and like, move, whatever your goals are, go to where you want to be.
And I just remind myself it's about the process, because exactly like you're saying, the important point is that I did better then than I did the last time.
Yeah.
And then the goal is to do better the next time than I had done just now. It's not about performing it to the perfect standard, as we discussed before. It's about using that standard as a guiding light to give you a trajectory, so that because it's about being in a state of growth.
And let's talk about that too, because I think sometimes as we said, you have to take a step back to take a step forward. You have to work in like increments and then global, like separation, global, separation, global. And sometimes when you learn something in separation and you put it back to that global aspect, it might not work properly.
Yeah.
And then that's where you have to learn how to integrate that. And that might lead you to now working on another separation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes it feels demoralizing, but like just going through processes of learning, even like injury recovery and process of learning, like move, like just my body, I felt like it's like stocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as at the end of the day, when you look from, month to month, we have growth.
It's trending in the right direction.
It's exactly trending in the right direction.
Yeah. And it's this funny duality or alternating between looking at the trees and then seeing the forest, and trees and forest, and trees and forest and tree. Ito has a beautiful metaphor for this, in that it's like a spinning coin.
Yeah.
A spinning coin, you at no moment are you seeing just heads or tails. It's always in movement. It becomes both. And I think that that's a beautiful metaphor. But it's that it's as a coach or as a student, you're trying to see both, and on many scales, right? Not just, so when you're doing a movement, you're looking at both, the isolated element of maybe a certain joint, but then you're also thinking about the whole position. But then even taking that a step further, you're also looking at the exercises that you're doing as part of your training program as isolated units in and of themselves, and that they're part of a greater, journey of progress.
It's like the spiral.
Yeah, a cycle of cycles is not a cycle, it's a spiral. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So,
pardon me, I'm just gonna take my hat off.
Sure. You could have built up a bit more tension and had a hair reveal.
That's okay. It's okay. It looks okay right now. Actually, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, that's good. Nice. You look good. You look good today.
Thanks, man. So I had the refreshing class today.
Yeah.
There's some nice movements today. We did actually a pretty good movement today. It was what do we call it, like a frog squat.
Okay.
And you sit in deep squat, elbows on the knees, kind of just a little bit of pressure out, and then you move up into a hinge, and all you do is topple your body over, so you're almost in like a deadlift position,
like a forward fold.
Yep. Not a full forward fold. Like you're in almost like a deadlift position, a hinge
like back
position.
Straight.
Yep. And then you come back down into deep squat, and then extend up into hinge position, and then back down with the elbows always on the knees. Felt pretty good.
Are the knees straight at the top when you're in the hinge?
No. You're still in like a half squat hinge, like a
so it's like the bottom position of a deadlift.
Essentially, yeah, like that quarter squat, like hinge, bottom position of a deadlift. It was kind of nice.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, just like a simple thing. I felt like it's just very effective for like the people that sit at home at their offices all the time. There's just kind of like that opposite force of what you're doing all the time, that like closing in of the legs, because you're just like letting your hips drop.
But this might be some good inside baseball discussion. We'll put it in the context of your work. But I had this inquiry that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Because hopefully in the near future, I'll be running a lot more group classes as well.
Yeah.
And it's something that I feel quite confident in the one-on-one space, because you can build relationships, very close relationships, and you have very close observation of the student. And it's very easy to progress, because they do the training, and then, the next workout, you progress some variable, weight, volume, change the rest, the complexity of the movement. So the progression is quite easy to manage. I find that groups seem to be more difficult, and it seems to be one of the things that's lacking in group classes that I notice, which is often you can find a class where great exercises are being performed, things that are probably
Sure.
very useful and beneficial. But
Mm-hmm.
then one of the core principles of training, as we both know, is progressive overload. You only get better by exposing yourself to more
Sure.
challenging,
Sure.
stress in some way. So again,
Of
it's
course.
often through increasing the loading through weight or adjusting the mechanical position. You might increase the volume by doing more sets or reps. You might decrease the amount of rest you take. You might, these are the common ways you would increase progressively
Yeah.
overload, or you would increase the complexity of the movement. You'd do something more
Sure.
complex.
Sure.
So the problem with group classes, as I see it, is that you'll have, maybe it's because you often don't have continuity in the people. Like week in,
Mm-hmm.
week out, you don't have the same people. It's kind of unpredictable. You don't know if you're going
Sure.
to get the same
Sure.
students or a completely different set. But there seems to be a real lack of progression where you may do great exercises, but then you may just do the next week. It's not like the workout's any harder in any way. It's mixed
Yeah.
up. It's a remix. It's varied, but it's not more challenging. So if you had a student who was only doing group classes for 6 months
Yeah.
a year, that's where I find you don't see people actually progressing, actually developing. They can make a lot of gains up
Yeah.
front because any program is going to work in a few weeks.
Sure.
But then in the long term, eventually it becomes stale. What do you think about that?
It's hard to say. I think it depends on the business model, first of all, right? So the one thing I'll say personally about like F45, just reading into their business model and seeing what they're about, they do have, kettlebells, barbells, pull-up bars in gym, which you're able to like progressively overload and push yourself to your limits. And it's encouraged in some of the workouts. So they'll have them incremented, like the heavier strength workouts where you're working in lower reps. You're still doing circuit fashion, but you're working in lower reps. You're working on more strength-based movements, and they have a good interval of like upper body push, pull, and everything like that. But you can really push yourself there to as many like pull-ups, squats, push pulls. They'll have all the tools for you there. But I even think in the context, right, like we talk about like Arnold isolation, like all these guys talked about so much about flexing, and even pre-show, they would get the towel and they would just create resistance against each other and go through the motions. And they told you it was like it's not doing the exercise, it's doing the exercise. Really understanding what you're flexing, how you're getting those contractions to happen, right? And I think there, as you said, like there's certain things you won't be able to do. Like, are you going to be able to get massive quads doing body weight exercises? No. Are you going to be able to get like massive chest, massive arms doing just push-ups and pull-ups? No. But we've seen over time, like even with people just like to just work body weight, but can really hone in on that feel and that and get a good understanding, they can really get results. And what I was,
I'm going to challenge you on that one, actually.
okay,
I think with upper body training, body weight training is just as good as weight training for hypertrophy if it's
I agree.
approached.
I agree with you. If it's
And I think that's because it requires knowledge, but it is very easy to increase the amount of loading on the pecs, on the delts, on the triceps,
yeah,
on the biceps by increasing the complexity of the movement. So if you're progressing towards handstand push-ups, planche push-ups, one-arm chin-ups, front lever rows, you're
mm-hmm.
going to be overloading the muscles in a
Yeah.
comparable and even more complex way than if you're just lifting weights. I think you're right though in the lower body, that lower
Lower
body
body would
becomes
be a
very
little bit
difficult to
tougher.
load.
Yeah, but just as I was saying, like, and just as you're saying there, you can do that in a class setting, right? You can get that done in a class setting. And I think the way to approach it though is look at less of the exercise and get people more understanding the feel and the function.
Yeah.
So and how to, and the key that I found with clients that works the best and the people that get the most progression is the people that really understand and try and learn how to integrate it into their lives and understand that there is no separation there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start paying attention all the time, you're working on movement patterns, your efficiency goes up. You know what I mean? Whether you're doing a body weight hinge or you're doing a deadlift, you're able to recruit more muscle for that. So you're able to pull yourself tighter, create more tighter tension, get your muscles tighter, get your muscles stronger, even in the regular movement that you do every day, create more demand in that movement if you want to, right? Like that connectivity. I think that's important for people.
Don't you think that too would have a limit? Like you could only, I mean,
Sure, of
there's
course.
a limit to how connected you can get, and at some point you're going to need to add more weight or
Of
increase
course,
some
right?
variable. So
Yeah,
my
and
question,
I
yeah,
do. Sorry, and I was just gonna say, and I don't necessarily think classes are the end all be all.
Mm.
I think they are really good for a beginner intermediate type of level. And I think, again, what is the goal at the end of the day? If people get to a point where they feel like they're comfortable and they enjoy being in the class setting, then they're going to stay. If
Yeah.
people tend to like it and they start to ask more questions of their body, then that's when hopefully they ask or learn or figure out themselves how to go about that, or find the resources as to how to learn all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think most classes are effective because they cater to absolute
Yeah,
beginners. It's like total
sure.
entry level. And
I will say though, Sean's class in Miami, even in the week that I did stuff, was pretty effective.
so that's
Even with
the,
all, and everyone were, and there was a lot of people at very different levels, knowledge, skill set, abilities. There's people that had knowledge, less ability. There was people that had less knowledge but natural ability,
yeah.
and they found a way to like kind of make stuff correlate and work and help with progression.
So that's what I find very fascinating is
Yeah.
there seems to be a way to approach group training or group classes
Hmm.
that does emphasize education and has within the general group schema has an individualized approach.
So but what I've sorry, what I've found though with the way that it works with most group training
Mm-hmm.
that people are successful, and I'll give you another example too. That like the guy that David used to come to the gym all the time at Crunch, Kimchi guy on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
super cool dude,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful guy. People buy in to what he's doing. So they pay attention and they think about it and they practice on their own time. And it
Mm.
becomes something that they're interested in versus I'm going to this 1 hour class.
Mm.
And
It's
I
like
think
there's some sort of connection or relationship they're building with
you're
it.
bought in. You're bought in. You know what I mean? Even like me when I go to hockey, like the reason why I was starting to get better at hockey too was I was thinking about hockey a lot.
Yeah.
I'd be in my
Yeah.
office, I had a hockey stick, I'd be thinking about hockey a lot, right? And when you're thinking about it a lot, you're just, even without knowing it, you're still that's why they say if you think about it, you can achieve it usually.
Yeah.
You're sending like low frequency pathways without moving. You know what I mean? I find, you're like patterning.
You're just staying, your entire being is in that mode of
Yeah,
this, okay, hockey, this
yeah,
becomes my
right.
essence. Or
And I think that was kind of what a lot of the people that succeed in classes, and I'll even say like Zumba, Pilates, yoga, there's a whole bunch of classes that people go to that don't succeed, that don't like clients that go to and don't succeed because just the teacher and everyone looks at it as the 1 hour class,
mm,
right? It's like, come in for my hour, and everyone's like, 7:30, I should go in for that hour.
yeah,
Just sitting on the couch eating potato chips, or like just, right? But like like going to like Sean's class was like, yo, go to the beach, go work out,
mm,
like on the beach, like get our like strength in, do what we're not going to be doing at the class, trying to like counteract what we're doing at the class and make sure that we can like add stuff now that will work with the class. So you're bought in, right? So like more of your hours of the day go to it. So like when you get there, your progression is going to be that much better and that much more, your attention, everything, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna get more bang for your buck. And that's why I kind of even challenge people to not do something unless you're gonna buy in to a certain extent. I'm not saying change your life with it, but like at least put some effort to understand it, because you're just wasting your money otherwise.
So I'm just gonna like throw out a bit of maybe metaphysical babble, but the way I'm thinking of it is that it's like if you want progression over time with your students or with the people that you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be maybe a bedrock, like a foundational culture, because
Like
culture,
yeah, like a theory or some sort of like,
something that's binding you all together, some
yeah,
idea, set of values,
yeah,
maybe an individual, like a certain teacher or
sure.
whatever it is. Maybe it's a place, but whatever it is, if once you've got culture has continuity to it. Culture
Mm-hmm.
culture is history,
Yeah.
right? So by its nature, once you have a culture, now what you're doing isn't just taking place in these isolated 1 hour, once a week units. It's a
Mm-hmm.
continuum of, well, this is the culture of this place, and I'm
Yeah,
participating in this culture, and I'm giving back to
of
it.
course.
And so once you have that sort of underlying foundation, you can
Yeah,
scaffold on top of that. I've been
yeah.
hearing people talk about scaffolding in all these podcasts, movement podcasts. It's stuck in my fucking head. But you're going to scaffold on top of this bedrock. Your individual progression as a
Yeah.
mover.
and I think there needs to be a team camaraderie there too. Like almost like as much as there's going to be individual goals, there's going to be team goals, right?
Yeah,
And what would
yeah,
the team goals be? Team goals would be encouragement. Team goals would be, understanding people are at different levels. Team goals are having people that are seniors, willingly help juniors,
yeah,
right? So like everyone and teaching the seniors that helping the juniors is only going to help sharpen your tools,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then you
exactly.
create that, that cycle of support versus a cycle of competitiveness. And people think you can't have competitiveness in support,
Of
but
course you can.
I think there's actually better competitiveness in support because you're in an environment of like happiness and like openness and like growth versus an environment of like you're trying to beat someone.
Yeah, bro.
It's
It's
kind
like
of
when you.
like just go on,
It's
go
like
on.
well, it's just like when you got a good friend, right? You can talk shit to each other, you can rip
Of
into each
course.
other
Yeah.
because you fundamentally understand that you love
Yeah.
each other, and then
And it's from a
it's
growth level. Yeah.
yeah, and it's from a place of growth or just to entertain one another. You just fucking around.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's
And
with
and
strangers,
in
it
the
becomes
essence
really
of like
awkward.
even if yeah, and in the essence too of like even if you win and beat someone, like what's the best way to mitigate that and make sure everyone wins is help them understand what they could do better,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like don't just be like I beat you, bitch.
yeah,
Like be
exactly.
like, yo, like, hey, if you try this, dude, next time you got a chance.
Or even if you don't, it doesn't even have to be communicated verbally. Like I would think about when I was boxing, and if you were sparring with someone who was much better than you,
Mm-hmm.
the best sparring partners were guys who were able to bring their skill level down a bit. So
Yep.
they were still just inching you out.
Yep.
But they weren't just dominating, because that
Yep.
would give you a challenge, but something that could be workable and you could work around, like working with
Exactly.
kids.
And the cool part too with that I think the people that are just beating people down don't that they forget the value is the person you're fighting with is going to get better. You're teaching them how to become not just like how to use their skills, but how to become you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like improvise and like learn and like adapt. And then on top of that, they're gonna do stuff with their brain and they're gonna take the information that you're giving them and process it a bit differently.
Yeah,
And then that's gonna help sharpen your skills and help refine your skills because they might hit you a certain way that you taught them how to, you know what I mean? By going slower, bringing your level down. And all of a
yeah,
sudden they
man.
pop you once and you're like, okay, now we could bring it up a bit. And then slowly before you know it, you're both growing together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like if you're an advanced fighter, for example, you might, because most of your competition and sparring partners are going to be on your level, things are happening at such a rapid clip. And maybe if you're sparring with someone who's at a lower skill level, well, now
Mm-hmm.
everything's slowed down a bit. So maybe you're, as an advanced fighter, you can
Yeah.
now see opportunities, see little combinations or moments you wouldn't
Yeah.
have seen otherwise, or get a
And
different look.
hey, we can segue into opportunity
Yeah, yeah.
because
So
everything at the end of the day, and we'll get into opportunity, and everything is an opportunity. And I think the question comes to most things in life is what can we take out of the opportunity, and we're going to seize the opportunity.
yeah.
And you can give like a little introduction there.
Well, the way I was, what just came to mind is I think of the idea that everything is a game,
It
and
is. It is.
not
Yeah.
to trivialize life. You can play games very, very seriously. You can treat
Mm-hmm.
life very,
Mm-hmm.
very seriously. But I think it's useful to look at it as a game because it seems to play out like one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see it as a game, then you realize that, well, there are opportunities to play everywhere. There are opportunities to play these games all over the place. But just because you accept an opportunity doesn't mean that it's going to be the best version of, you're going to get the best possible outcome, because you still need to
Yeah. Of
play the game and play it to the best of your ability,
course.
and
And put
and
an effort to learn. To
and put in,
learn.
yeah, you have
So
to
you can
learn the rules of the game. You have to
opportunity.
learn like just how to navigate that field. So yeah, you wanted to talk about this idea that just because you're given an opportunity, it's also the responsibility of the individual to put
Yeah.
and play an active role to get the best outcome.
Yeah, and we can segue this into like with the classes too, and like giving people that helping people understand the mindset of how to transfer it to their everyday lives or to buy into it and everything like that. Because the way I was explaining it to you earlier is like it seems like people have opportunities that they think they're seizing, but it's all a facade. So for example, like a lot of people go to the gym and then when they're at the gym, they're very mindless and they think that just because they went to the gym, that there's going to breed some sort of results or just be healthier. Meanwhile, the gym, being able to go to the gym and going to the gym is the opportunity. You know what I mean? And if you don't learn how to seize that opportunity, then you're just going to be stuck in that opportunistic phase and you're never going to get results. And I think that happens to a lot of people, right?
Yeah, we talk a lot about how it's the first step is turning up, and turning up is, getting you most of the way there and whatnot, which is totally true. Like you can't do the thing if you're not there to do the thing, if you're not turning up for it.
Of
But
course.
then
But I think a lot of people just stop at turning up.
yeah, man. What isn't it infuriating when you'll see someone like it didn't happen that often, thankfully, but you see people walking around the gym on their cell phone, either not exercising at all or just doing something so low, low level,
like one-legged crossed, pressing, then they answer a phone with one hand.
exactly.
And,
Or just on the treadmill, just like at a stroll, and they'll spend 20, 30 minutes on the phone, and then they'll go into the bathroom and have a shower and get changed and come out, and then maybe they'll work on their phone or their laptop for a bit, and they'll turn up day in, day out, and there's almost, you can feel this attitude of, well, I'm going. Sometimes you'll even overhear them on the phone. Man, I've been at the gym for an hour.
Yep.
Totally lacking the context.
I would get it told to me in the consultations.
Yeah,
right?
go on that.
I know what I'm doing. I'm doing what works for me, and like it's hard to knock it, right? Because if someone says they're doing what works for them, that's great. But then you ask the other questions, right? Like, what are your goals?
Yeah.
What are you looking to do? And then they go XYZ, right? But they just do this because this works for them. But I'm like, you're not here.
Yeah. You're not getting closer to that.
Exactly, right? Because you've been doing this and this is what works for you. And I'm like, you're just wasting an opportunity because you have the opportunity because you already have questions.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity now to expand on those questions and get some knowledge to actually get here. Yeah. And it's just really weird, like how some people just get stuck here and they know they won't get here, but they have this false hope that they will just because they feel like this effort is worth it here because they don't understand it. You know what I mean? It's like a weird conundrum. Like you're telling them like no, and they like know it deep down inside. They know it, but there's like this false hope that they tell themselves like, nah, if I've heard it somewhere, if I keep walking on the treadmill, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're like, well, I'm doing something, so something's got to happen. I got to get some result, which is true on some level.
But the funnier part is then you got people complain about like structural problems, knee issues, ankle issues, and
they just accept that as the way that life is. That's just the way it goes.
No, I've heard people say that they're trying to fix on walking on the treadmill, and I go and I give them the actual backing as to why it potentially won't and potentially could cause more problems and stuff like that. And they tell me that this works for them, so they're gonna keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then you see them limp away.
That may be true.
You see them limp away, and you're like, it's Just for me, I look at it as like the opportunity is there. It's just these people just get stuck in that that opportunity phase. They just don't know how to or want to seize it, and I don't know. I can't understand why.
I'm going to take this into a bit more philosophical territory because that's what I like to do. But where it leads my thinking is that it's almost a failure to recognize that there exists both an external and an internal world.
Yeah. So
it's like you're acting as if just satisfying the external conditions of, say, being in the gym, that is enough to create the actual change which you're looking for, which is actually an internal change. I'm looking to change something about myself by doing this thing of going to the gym, but it's failing to recognize that this internal world even exists perhaps, or that there's that relationship. So you go, well, I'm satisfying I'm turning up to work. I'm turning up to the gym. I'm going to class, but what are you doing while you're in that class, while you're at the gym, while you're at your work? Are you focused? Are you paying attention first and foremost? And then are you applying yourself? Are you trying to get the most out of it? And I think about the idea of holidays. We go on holidays to try to change. Like that's a classic example. We feel something's wrong, twisted, rotten. I'm tired, fatigued, whatever. So I'm going to go on holidays. I'm trying to fix my external conditions. I'm trying to change my external conditions to fix an internal problem. But then we go on holidays and
that's pretty funny, eh?
That's what I'm saying, man. And so
That's a nice conundrum.
we go on
Yeah.
holidays and we stuff our faces with food and booze and sit by the
And
pool.
do worse probably for our body to a
Yeah,
certain extent.
but we're numbing ourselves to it with a lot of all the
Yeah.
alcohol and whatever.
Yeah.
So what we're really doing is not changing the conditions. We're not giving ourselves therapy. We're just giving ourselves some temporary numbness. We're putting ourselves into an almost deeper sleep state
Yeah.
for just a couple of weeks so we can just escape from reality, and then we get back to it. But we
And
don't.
that's why everyone needs a vacation from vacation.
Exactly. But dude, I mean, part of it's I'm a fucking tired ass, or I prefer to spend my money on other things, let's say.
Sure.
But I've often found that I get back from holidays and my thinking is just, I don't want to do that again, because I'd rather just spend a week at home, like,
Yeah.
because it's so much more about.
I would say you're for sure not a tight ass because you spend money on things that you value.
Yeah.
I know that about you. You'll have no problem buying a brand new pair of movement shoes because you value them that are $130. You have no problem buying
we're not even thinking about it. Yeah.
You wouldn't even hesitate. You have no problem buying, product or supplement that you find that you need.
Or that I want to try. Yeah.
Right. You have no problem. You have no problem buying equipment for your, as long as you find the value to it. So, and I see why you don't find the value in the vacation, why it becomes like so hard to really like go through that. Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
even
for me, it's just a lot of it's being sedentary because I'm sitting on a plane. I fucking hate flying. I get motion sickness because so I hate being on the plane. And then you're at the place and it's just like, all I basically want to do is train and it's just like, well, I can't eat exactly how I want to eat. And I can probably train, pretty well, but I'd also just rather be home and doing all this anyway. But that's being, I've been on some fantastic holidays where but that's when you're seeing unique things that are really special that you can only experience by being at that place.
And but you're also doing it a lot of time with a goal, right?
Yeah.
And the goal is for you to create and expand new experiences, and the goal for other people is to do what they do on binge drinking weekends for a week. Create that void and go back more into that void of what they know. And like for you, the vacations that are great are the ones that are like, putting you into new environments, new scenarios, just getting new information,
Like as an example, when I went to my first big trip with a good friend of mine, we went to Europe, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And we kind of planned the trip around some restaurant reservations we made, because we looked at this list of the 500 best restaurants in the world, or maybe the 100 best restaurants in the world, or it might even be 50, by this very famous magazine called Restaurant. It's literally called Restaurant Magazine.
Sick. Right.
And
hey, to the point.
Yeah, it's like this
like
is kind of
you're so good that you got Restaurant Magazine.
Yeah, they're just called Restaurant. Exactly. Sick. So they do this list. Now, to be fair, they exclude a lot of like second and third world countries. So there may be fantastic food in these countries, but you'll never hear about it because they're looking at like Europe, Australia, America. But we went to,
unfortunately, it's business, right? Like where people are going to go.
Exactly. So we went to what was at the time. Did we go to 2 or 3? We definitely went to 2 of. One restaurant was ranked number 2, I believe, and maybe the other one was ranked number 4 or something like that, of the best restaurants in the world. One of them is owned by Massimo Bottura, who is still considered one of the best chefs on the planet. He's an Italian guy in Modena, Italy. So we went.
Sick name, Massimo
Bottura, yeah.
Wow.
And so we went to these restaurants, and each of us probably spent about $300-$400 for the meal. Like per meal. So we probably spent like $1,000 just on like two meals each, something like that. With it, like, some wine, but it was like these 12-course meals. Amazing. And it was a fucking experience, man. Like you went in there and it was a culinary experience. The food was like, oh my God, I didn't know food could taste this good or taste this way. But then it was also just a total experience of the quality of the service, the attitude of the servers. And like the chef would come out and introduce himself to you and talk about the food and bring you into the kitchen, and you would see them operate, and you would see them operate with such quality and efficiency and passion. And it's just
professionalism.
And it was so inspiring,
Because I think the key there is what you said too, is passion though, right? They're bought in. And they just even go back to buy. It's like they're bought in, like the waiters, the servers, the bar guys, whatever.
And the sommelier, the wine guy,
like
every step of the way.
Like that guy's pouring you the wine with his thing over, and he's like, dabbing the wine after, and they're like everyone
Like
there is
the
bought in.
layout of the restaurant, the art on the walls, the tables,
Yep.
the cutlery, like every, and it
Yeah.
just gives you a taste of, wow, things can be experiences can be this good. They
Mm-hmm.
can be this high quality. Not to say you're going to pursue every moment of your life to be exactly like this and to spend $1,000 on every meal,
Yeah.
but it gives you a really great reference point. So now I come home, and when I'm cooking, I'm trying to figure out how to recreate these flavor
Yeah. Cool.
experiences or something like it, you know. And
But back to opportunity. That's because you sees the how many people go to these restaurants just to go to the restaurant.
or to say that they've been to the restaurant, even
But that's what I'm
worse.
saying. Like post a picture, like because for the, like it's like they're
I don't
not
even
thinking.
know where our pictures are of this fucking trip. I know we took some, but yeah, I don't have them in an album somewhere. Yeah, because it's in here. It's like,
And not to
exactly.
say, guys, not to say pictures aren't good and documenting memories and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, 100%. But at the
Yeah,
end of the day, it's like
I don't
it's
value them anywhere near as much as just having
you
done
know
it.
you want to be able to look at those pictures and 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 be able to think of the experience you had and relive it versus look at the picture and say, oh,
And
this
to
is
show your
from when I
friend.
went to like this.
Yeah,
This is from when
yeah,
I went to this. You could be like, oh man, this is when I went to that place, Massimo, and dude, it was crazy.
yeah.
Like it was crazy. Like, dude, 12-course meal.
Can I
You
tell
know
you
what
about
I
one of the
mean?
dishes?
Yeah, go. Tell us.
So,
Tell us.
one dish that really stood out was at Osteria Francescana, which is the name of Massimo Bottura's restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing, just to give you an idea of the experience, right? So we get to the restaurant, we flew or got a train into Modena, into the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a town city. It's not like a big built up city. It's
Sure.
pretty quaint. And so as me and my friend, we got dressed up because we thought, well, button up shirts and whatever. But we had
Yeah.
our luggage with us, so these huge bags. And I don't think we were staying in Medina. Maybe we were just going to the restaurant and we were carrying
Sure.
on with our travels. So we get to the restaurant, and it's just this like black door in the middle of this random street. Like you can
This
barely
is the
even tell it's
Massimo
there.
one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Um, and you get up close and you see the name of it. And you see the
Yeah.
by Massimo Bottura, and we're standing at the front and the door's locked, and because we were a little bit early, we're maybe like 20 minutes early or something
Yeah.
to our reservation, and fucking Massimo comes out, like the chef.
Main man.
Yeah, and he introduces himself,
Okay,
and
you keep going. I'm gonna Google Massimo.
Massimo Bottura, Bottura. It'll come up straight away.
Bottura. B-U-T-T.
Bott, Bottura.
B. Oh, yeah, Bottura.
Yeah,
Oh, what a stud. Look at this
yeah.
fucking cool guy, eh?
Oh yeah, he's wonderful. So he comes out, like not a staff member. He comes out and there's like a staff member behind him, and
What an experience.
he shakes our hand and he's like, we're still getting ready. We can take your bags, and if you could just just enjoy the town for 20 minutes and come back, and it would be ready to go.
Can I touch on this and bring it back to what we're saying about having a successful group class?
Yeah,
I think the most important part is you have to buy in yourself.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that honest thing about lead by example and all that stuff, it's really true, man. Like it's true, right? Like even when I'm like doing class here and I'm like doing the exercise, I'm not just doing the exercise as a show. I'm not just like like you know what I mean. Like I'm trying my best to get as much as I can and make every rep better than the last one in that exercise.
yeah,
And I've definitely even seen from the classes that I've done, and then when I walk around also giving people an honest review of what they're doing,
yeah.
right? And if it's the same, some coaches, like again, you're not bought in, so they just say, fix this once, and you keep doing it wrong, and they're like, screw it, I told them once, they don't
Let's
want
go.
to do it
Yeah,
again.
good job. Keep going.
Yeah, I'll repeat, we're here to like in a positive way, like let's do it type of thing. And I think leading by example becomes so much easier for people to take your advice, to take what you're telling them, absorb the information, want to do better themselves, because they're like, fuck, this guy's bought in. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times I think even in class setting, because there's a perception that, oh, this coach didn't get his body by doing the class.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
dude, this
And
guy
and
is
dude,
fucking
most of the
on
time it's
side.
true. Most of the time it's true. The coach didn't get there by doing
Sure,
that method.
sure, but doesn't mean that he couldn't benefit from it. And if he shows that he's benefiting from it and even progressing in some sort of way, you know what I mean? Even if that's just acclimating to like the new style of training,
Yeah.
it's still showing some sort of progression. I think that and like that, and buying in and putting effort is really what allows people to join you, right?
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
start pushing the car. If no one joins, no one joins.
Yeah.
Hey, you're still benefiting.
Yeah, leading by example is the only way to go, man.
Yeah.
I really believe that. But yeah, so we go into we go back.
There's our 20-minute in town, and now we're back at the restaurant.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
little
We
cut
went
up.
for a stroll. We had a little chat about group
That's it.
training. We come back to the
That's
restaurant.
it.
And so we go through this meal, and the whole thing's spectacular. One of the revelations was we had wine pairing, and it was the first time in my life that I understood why that even
Like
matters.
food, wine, what
Yeah,
goes together.
so there's like 12 courses, right? And it wasn't every course, but maybe every second or third course, you would get a different glass of wine with that course.
Would it alternate red, white, or was there a
I
theme?
know. I don't think it alternated strictly, but I'm sure there was a logic to it because.
Sorry, not necessarily alternate red, white every time, but like were they?
Oh, there's a variety. Yeah,
they were intermingled. There was a variety.
Yeah,
That's what I meant.
I think it probably started white and then developed more to red as it went on.
Yeah.
But
that makes more sense, more with the meats and stuff.
Exactly. But it was a revelation because you would eat the food, you're like, this food tastes amazing, right? And then you would drink the wine, you'd be like, this wine tastes like incredible. Like I never tasted wine like this.
And somehow it doesn't offset the food and vice versa.
Not only that, you would then go back to the food, and with the wine still coating your palate, you would eat the food and you'd be like, this wine changed the way this fucking food tastes, and now it's even more delicious. What voodoo is this? It was just unbelievable. It's like wine.
I'm gonna have to explain this to Sophia because she can't hear you obviously now because she can only hear me.
Yeah.
But I will tell her about this experience. I'll tell her we need to go to this place because I will actually go. And this is what experiences do, though. I will actually go to this if it's still this, if this restaurant's still there.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous, man. It's so good. So we go through this. I won't go through all of it, but basically the last dish was, or one of the last dishes was a dessert, and it was Massimo himself brings it out. And he goes, this is a broken lemon cake. And so this dish,
broken lemon cake.
It was a broken lemon cake.
Was it crumbled?
So it was a cake. Okay, I'll just describe it first, or what he said. He goes, the concept of this dish was
By the way, were you guys the only ones there? Because honestly, it seems like this guy's just serving this owner of this restaurant. It's like this weirdo just opened the door. He's like, "Hey guys,
I've been waiting for you.
20 minutes. There's just one guy in the restaurant just bringing you food. Like, you like my broken lemon cake?" That's what I'm like visioning right now. It's some Transylvania shit.
It was a lunch service, so it was more quiet. There was maybe 2 other tables in there at the time, so maybe like only 8 other people.
So he probably low key went to everyone.
Yeah. He walked around, but it was also a very very small restaurant. I think it only sat maybe 30, 40 people at most.
So it's, the guy doesn't need money.
Yeah,
it's
passion.
I
mean, you're paying €350 or something for maybe €200.
Yeah, I'm sure it offsets, but I'm sure he's still like, you could do more and make more if you want.
Oh, he does a lot of stuff. He does a lot of like TV and media stuff as well.
This is just passion, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So the lemon cake, he goes, the concept of this dish is that it's like, you've been working all day on this cake, and you walk out to give it to your friends, and you slip. And it drops and it breaks on the floor. And so this dish looked like a lemon cake that had been dropped and was cracked. So it was like perfectly cracked. Like glass?
Beauty and destruction.
Yeah, exactly. It'd been cracked. But not only that, the plate had literally been made custom for this dish, and they had gotten a plate, broken it, and then put it back together.
Amazing.
So you could see all the fragments had been like reassembled. Smooth with a broken lemon cake on top. And it's just like, and
it's so simple yet so effective.
And it just brought this whimsy, this like fun, and like this story to this thing. You're looking at it looks exactly like that, and it was totally delicious.
See, but that's someone that's bought in for the right reasons.
Yeah,
that's like true passion and like understanding something with love versus that competitiveness, versus like competitiveness in like a open, like supportive environment versus not, even that in your own body. You can do that in yourself, by the way. You can breed that in yourself. It has to start breeding with yourself first, right? And even like if you're dealing with someone's competitive in like the opposite manner, doesn't mean that you have to take it like that. You can always take it as you want, right? It's your life. Bon Jovi. Right? No,
it's now or never.
yeah, in reality, it's got to start somewhere, and things do start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's cool. And he's definitely bred that environment himself. And I think it's cool because his staff probably have some sort of creativity environment for themselves
Yeah.
there too. And I'm sure he's open to it. So, it's pretty cool that kind of shows me when I hear that about the plate and the cake and stuff.
It's just so silly. You're like, it's that really nice contrast. I mean, it's like what meditative monkey kind of what we're aiming to
Yeah,
represent, right? It's that
sure.
contrast of you've got this serious, this auteur, this craftsman, this
Yeah.
master of his craft, like legitimately on the
Yeah.
world stage. This guy is a cooking master. He's a master
And it's
chef.
serious, but it's also not.
It's so serious, but then the experience is so silly and
Yeah.
goofy and fun.
Yeah.
And he's so childlike, and it's just it's
But
just
it
so
goes to
it's
show you
reaffirming because you know that it's nice to know that both can exist. Yeah.
you can be serious and you can play.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know that, and then they lose that like, you can play serious.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
still playing,
Yeah.
play serious. It's like, as we talked about, it's a game, right? So don't fall too much into the seriousness of it. Play serious,
And
you know,
not only is that an option, not only
and
can you play
play.
serious, but maybe it's necessary, or maybe it's actually really good, like to play serious.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a higher aim.
And I think that's honestly, and I challenge people to go play video games and maybe like find like a nice RPG game that you like, because I think it highlights a lot of that.
Mm.
A lot of that, like, challenges, goals that are hard, that are progressive. And then it has aspects of just play,
Yeah.
go be free, you learn now, but it's all in context, like as the levels get harder, you can go challenge your skills and play against harder challenges, but it's not necessarily the main challenges that are really hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like what I was talking about too with the soccer, that I was thinking of, like making sure like point A and point B are taken care of, and then adding that play in between,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like there's got to be that positive, that negative, that like that balance, or else everything becomes too crazy.
Yeah. And it just represents that improvisational layer where it's a process of discovery of using tools
Yeah,
that you've developed, but in an open,
free.
free way.
Yeah,
And I mean,
yeah.
that's, I think intuitively
That's
that's
true
what we all
learning.
want.
I think that could be the final point of learning, right? Like,
Yeah.
and even if we look at it as sport and this and that, like technically it is the final point of learning. It's like, make sure you have some context, make sure you have some goals, make sure you have stuff that you're working on repetitively, putting work in, getting better. And then it's like, go show me.
Yeah.
It's like Matrix.
Yeah.
Download Kung Fu. Our download is a lot slower because we have to actually go through it. But
Until
he downloads.
until Neuralink is available.
Yeah, let's push it because the stock's going up. But
Ah!
actually, Tesla dropped a little bit today. We're talking like Elon stuff, but Tesla dropped a little bit today. But
That was a
stocks,
goofy press conference, man.
I didn't even watch it. I gotta watch it.
Oh, it's fucking terrifying.
He's a bit of a scary guy, but
They're gonna screw out a piece
um,
of your skull and install little hockey
but
puck in there.
they're already doing that though. They already do. So I watched a video of a guy with severe Parkinson's, and they only do this to people that medication doesn't work with. And it's not Neuralink. It's something else.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
Neuralink. It's something else. But it's the same idea. They don't even fully put you to sleep. I was reading the comments of people that had it
yeah.
done.
They can't
They
with any
put you in
brain
like a
surgery.
weird, like, yeah, they put you in like a weird sedated state, and then enough so like if they like touch something, like
They know if you're fucking
they're
up.
able
They
to.
know if they're fucking up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's like pretty cool, but like it was really cool to see, bro.
dude.
The guy couldn't eat cereal for 20 years,
Yeah, yeah. I
and
think I saw that on Reddit. Yeah,
this guy just hits the clip. It's like, and he's laughing because it's
but
comical,
bro,
right?
but isn't it also comical that they're fronting that this is all about helping people with disabilities?
But isn't that what they front everything is? Like they put some sort of
So
spin on it.
the purpose of this multi-trillion-dollar technology is to help the fraction of
Yeah.
a percent of the population that
Yeah.
suffer from Parkinson's.
Meanwhile, we're watching like all these movies, and these guys just want to emulate that.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk is on Joe Rogan saying that the biggest threat to humanity is fucking AI, and that we need to learn to integrate with them.
Well, that's part
It's so
that was
like he's
part
not
of his
hiding it, but
argument too, though, right? Like argument was like, is if AI gets so powerful and we're not some sort of understanding of it, like
yeah,
actually understanding of it, and that's like a weird way to look at it too, opportunity, right? Like having a bit of it or being like a hybrid
yeah,
six. I'm looking forward to our future. Um, you know what I mean? You understand it, like actually what it feels, right? And then you can put that hopefully into saving the planet in some Terminator style fashion.
I, for one, look forward to the Reddit wars between the organic humans and the hybrid humans of the future.
Yeah,
Because that's going to be the next race war.
Gattaca.
I haven't seen it. Is that what's about?
Dude, you haven't seen Gattaca with Jude Law and Ethan Hawke? Ethan Hawke?
I don't think so.
The,
I know
the
of it.
genetically modifying, and they started doing it with the embryos, and they were making perfect babies. And then one was genetically modified, one wasn't. Yeah, you'll see. It's dude, wonderful movie. But
Rick and Morty, triangle versus circle nipples all the way.
Yep, same thing with South Park on remember the fleas on the dog. Anyways, yeah, so they had this similar thing to South Park too.
Yeah, because we'll always find a way to tribalize ourselves and have us versus them. But
ain't that the truth?
So you're talking about soccer, connecting A and B.
Yeah,
go back 6 threads.
Like, having that freedom. Yeah, I'm so lost. But having that freedom and stuff, I think is just so important for like growth and like people buying in and like just even like succeeding in life. You know, like making sure that you understand that there's play in that seriousness.
So just to maybe wrap up these topics, then we'll move on to our final one for today. The fun one. Yeah. Wait. So peekaboo. Episode, what is it? Episode 6.
It's like what's it? Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah. So to tie it all in, when I was thinking about that, what the group classes lack process, and if we like, I'm going to bring back to Ito. Ito's the fucking man when it comes to movement culture, whether we in it or not.
Everything's got a professional, and I would even look at Bikram as a sick professional for that.
With all the sordid history.
Guys, watch the documentary, please. It's crazy.
That's crazy. But if there's that progression, right? If the progression, if the high standard of movement's the improvisation or the play layer, and you start with the isolation, and then you integrate, and then you eventually improvise, then I think a successful class, and this is what people like Sean, I mean, it's no coincidence he is a student of Ito, but you know, Sean in Miami with the Republic of Movement, what they would have provided you is this progression that's heading towards not just structured elements, but heading towards that improvisational layer, that play layer, whether it's through games or whether it's through a progression in the exercises. But I think that's
one of the Miyagi stuff too, right? Like the wax on, wax off. It's like, you know, you learn a little bit of a skill, and then there's pairing games with, you know, that don't necessarily, like, again, not like a structured way of working on that skill, but requires that skill a little bit more than something else.
Yeah.
And then you realize that there's a cross correlation of that skill in that game. And then you can try and use that skill and get better at doing that skill in the game, you know, doing spinal waves while you're holding the stick or stuff like that. Right. Like, it's pretty fun.
And you realize that you can take advantage of the more opportunities in that game, the more tools you have by developing them in isolation and integration, then you bring those tools into the game the next time, and the game evolves. And that's just kind of in my mind how I put it all together.
I think our keys there are: make sure you're trying to seize opportunity. Don't just stop at opportunity. Ask questions, as we said in every podcast. Ask questions. Make sure you try and seize the moment, seize the opportunity, and make sure you just try and continually learn and grow. Like I think that's what we're really going for here, and buy in. You know, if you're really looking to change and do something in any aspect, buy in.
Dude, I think I actually just want to touch on that briefly, but I think that's true for better or worse. I think one of the big
you learn.
I think exactly. I think one of the biggest reasons that people, all of us, fail to really get where we want to go in life is that we don't go all in on it.
Nope.
Whether it's and it's like because we're scared of going all in because we're worried that if I go all in and it turns out this isn't for me, I've just wasted my time. But I think actually what ends up happening more often than not is that you kind of end up going halfway in.
Yep.
And then you never truly discover whether it is for you or not. So you just you might spend.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just in that wasting time, you're wasting more time by going halfway in all the time, because you never learn what to put your time to.
Yeah, because you might spend 6 years, you know, doing a certain, you know, going halfway in on a certain thing before you realize it's actually not for you. Whereas if you went all in for 6 months, then you would have realized immediately, actually, I've really tried to do this and I realized it's not for me.
Well, let's break it down, right? Because I think just like, and quickly, just to top off, just to finish off what we're saying, is you see people that find their passion. I think there's no weird thing there for a lot of people, that there a lot of people that have found their passion are very extroverted. They get ahead in life. What do extroverts do a lot more? They buy in. Fuck it, send it, bro. You're playing
Mm,
beer pong, you're playing beer pong.
mm,
And it's because I think that they don't stop at opportunity.
mm,
They try and seize the opportunity and might say, shit, I was shit at that, but I tried my best.
mm,
And then eventually you find something you're good at, versus everyone always stopping at opportunity and maybe trying to see some opportunity and trying to take the next step, but you're teaching yourself to stop here. So it's like you're never trying to send it here,
yeah.
and then maybe you get here, like Kanye says, what, shoot for the stars. So if you fall in the clouds,
Mm,
right? I know it sounds funny, but in like real context, yeah, if you tell yourself, hey, I'm trying to be a professional basketball player, even though you're playing basketball for the first time, in a playful way, don't forget the play, then you might come up here, but at least, there's people that stop themselves here. So even if you get over it, it's pulling you back down. It's not pulling you up, you
there's
know?
an example that comes to mind by the extremely controversial figure, spiritual figure or teacher of Osho. There's a Netflix documentary called Wild Wild Country, I think, something like that. That's all about the sex cult that got built up around him and that he was involved with, and all the controversy. I haven't
What's
seen
it
it all the
called?
way through. I think
What's it
it's
called?
called
How long
Wild
is it?
Wild Country. It's like it's a mini series, a mini documentary series,
Okay, Sophia, Wild Wild Country.
something like that. You'll find it.
Wild Wild Country. We'll watch it today. Documentary. Okay.
But I learned about Osho years ago. He's a spiritual teacher who
Yeah.
was known for working with particularly a lot of high-end like CEOs and very
Mm-hmm.
wealthy people, and he was known for not living this sort of puritanical like monk-like lifestyle like a lot of these spiritual teachers do. Like
Sure.
if he was gifted a Cadillac, he'd keep the fucking Cadillac and he would enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
And he would
Wasn't that the weird thing about Bikram too, a little bit?
probably. So yeah,
Because he was like rich. Yeah, go on, go on.
so I don't know. I don't know Osho's deal at the end of the day. I haven't seen the
Yeah.
documentary, so I don't know I don't know the full story. But I have read some of his or transcriptions of some of his lectures
Mm-hmm.
and his work, and I found it very. It does. I think he's a very insightful man, or was a very
Sure.
insightful man. I think he had a lot of valuable things to say,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a he would often do question and answers. People would ask him questions in these lectures
Sure.
and he would answer them. And one of the questions that I read was a woman who asked him, because he would always say that, spiritually speaking, that men represent the positive energy or a positive
Mm-hmm.
force. Not to say positive is good. It's more of like positive and
Sure.
negative, like electricity. We have positive
Sure.
and
Yeah.
electric forces.
Testosterone, estrogen.
Yeah, it's
You know
just a
what I
way of
mean? Whatever.
describing it.
Sure.
So you'd say men are a positive force and women are not negative actually, but more of a neutral force.
Sure.
And it's within that it's like the yin and yang, right? It's within the contrast and the difference that you
Yeah.
get a complete whole. And so he
Mm-hmm.
would say this is the reason why, spiritually speaking, let's say homosexual relationships don't work as well as heterosexual relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I may be sort of misinterpreting that, but that's kind of
Sure.
the gist
But
I
there's
got
some
from it.
sort of gist towards that.
Yeah. So the question he was asked was by a woman who said, Osho, I hear what you're saying, but I actually believe that I may be a lesbian. I may be attracted
Sure.
to women, to people of my own sex. And so how should I approach this? If this is what I really feel in my heart, that this is who I am. And Osho said, this is fine. And what I would encourage, in fact, is that you pursue this fully and wholeheartedly. Because what you will
Mm.
find by doing that is I suspect you'll find that it's actually not for you, because you have two
Sure.
neutral forces, and
Yeah.
one of them has to take on the role of an active force. Active is actually a better word than positive, I think.
Sure.
So you'd say you have a neutral force and an active force. And if you have two neutral forces of two women together, one of them has to take on that role. And that's not a natural role. So it'll end
No.
up creating some sort of tension, or it won't work at
Yeah.
the end
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
day. That's what he believed. But the only way you're
Sure.
going to find that out for yourself is to actually live it out and go for it fully to discover that. And I thought that was just such good advice, because I have no personal, I don't really know either way about that idea of active and neutral forces and whether.
Sure. No, and you don't necessarily believe that, but the context of what he's saying about the full
Yeah, like
buy-in.
he's like, don't even listen to me. Don't believe me. Discover it
Yeah.
for yourself by going all in and really
Yeah.
go down that. If you think that path
Yeah.
is for you, go down that path and
And if
really,
you go 100% into it and you believe that's your life, to
you'll
keep
figure
going.
it out. You'll figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's wonderful advice. I think that's what everyone should try and do with whatever they're trying to do.
yeah. So, um, you can take
Shall we?
advantage of opportunities. Yeah. So the final topic I want to talk about today was one that I've been really interested to discuss
Mm-hmm.
because actually largely because it's one that makes me quite nervous to discuss on
Sure.
in an avenue where we're going to be putting this up
Sure.
online. You know, not that many
Yeah.
people are watching or listening
Yeah.
necessarily, but even the possibility that
Yeah.
in 10, 20 years time it might even be brought up and
Sure.
come back to haunt. Though I
I-
actually suspect that's
I'm
not
not
going to be
worried.
the case.
Yeah. I'm not worried. I'm a little less worried.
Yeah, yeah. So the topic is I actually want to start broader and maybe narrow it down. And the topic I
Sure.
wanted to talk about was the use of recreational drugs as opposed to performance enhancing drugs, the use
Mm-hmm.
of recreational drugs in training. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something that you and I have experience with in
Well,
certain forms.
practice.
Yeah, and
Sure.
practice in some forms
Yeah.
with some drugs.
Sure.
Um, but I thought it would be interesting to discuss it on a whole, just to give a bit of context to it. So you could have, so just to maybe specifically highlight what we're talking about, I'm thinking things like, training with, methamphetamines, like with speed, crystal meth, for example, or even drugs like cocaine,
Yeah.
but then all the way down to more commonly used recreational
Sure.
drugs like marijuana, like
Mm-hmm.
LSD, or even MDMA, ecstasy,
Mm-hmm. That'd be an
psilocybin.
interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. So like psilocybin mushrooms,
Sure.
DMT. I guess if you want to have a crazy 10-minute bloody,
What a pump.
yeah, mind and body. So it's a huge topic, but it's something
maybe
that, but
maybe we'll touch on it today and expand on it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we'll like touch on our experiences today of what we do, and we'll expand on that, and then maybe we can even like talk and like search some stuff and see what we can actually bring to people about other stuff and like the craziness of the world.
Exactly. So we talk a lot about putting things in the form of questions. So I'll try to put this in the form of a question. The question that I have is the use of drugs necessarily bad for when it comes to health and training? Because we talk about this, it's almost taken as a given that drugs are bad. Okay, right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
We all kind of
Yeah.
accept that. You got, particularly in Australia, I find, if you go to the
Sure.
average person, you ask them, hey, should you be taking drugs? They're going to think hard drugs. If you take drugs, they're not going to consider alcohol a
Sure.
drug necessarily, but drugs and training or health, good or bad. They're going to say, well, drugs are bad for you. It's an indulgence. It's something that can be fun, entertaining. It's
Yeah.
an outlet, but it's not healthy. And
it can't benefit you in any way.
And it can't benefit you in training in any way. And I'm not sure about that. I'm actually not sure. I have my feelings.
We can only speak to personal experiences and feelings.
Exactly. So I've got experiences that I can speak to which make me question that belief. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. But what do you think about that question? Maybe start with that. I want to hear your thoughts. Are drugs necessarily bad or unhealthy when it comes to, what we're talking about, your physical health and fit, and even, just overall health?
Sure. And you can only speak for yourself. And even when I talk to, and just to like touch on what me and Ben kind of train with all the time is we tend to smoke a little bit of the marijuana.
A little bit or a lot?
A little lot.
It depends who you're asking.
It depends who you're asking. Snoop Dogg, maybe not that much.
Do we have professional blunt rollers like Snoop Dogg? No, I cannot afford that shit. But
not yet.
The blunts, all the stuff.
Would I if I could? Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
But
maybe.
That's here nor there.
Yeah.
That's here nor there. I tell people the same thing. I personally have found benefits to it. It's hard to say because there's so many other things going on, and that's why I think there's no one proper benefit. You just find, that's why you have to find what works, and that's why it's hard to like that's why that, but even in context of like learning, that structure and play becomes so important, because you're not just doing it for one thing. You know, just like learning a movement, you're not just learning it for your hip. You have to figure out how to correlate it for everything.
Yeah.
So even with like smokers and stuff, I tell people that even like smoke in abundance, you know, don't necessarily work out when you smoke. I do it. I found that I've had, you know, increase in focus. I found that I've been able to put that focus towards increasing muscle contractions, you know, figuring out how to work better with my structure and put myself into more structural positions. And I find that smoking has allowed me to hone in on a lot of the stuff that I've learned and allow me to play more with it. But I do tell people that I've heard other experiences of people that cannot do that, and they kind of go the opposite way. So just like most things, you know, I do believe it's an individual thing,
Yeah.
but you know, I can attest to what I can attest to is I personally find that I do enjoy it, and I find multiple areas of benefit towards my training since I've done it.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't possibly explain the mechanism, what's happening to your brain on a
Yeah.
physiological level.
Yeah.
But my experience is that I think that they can, for me, there has been benefit, I believe, to
Hmm.
using psychoactive and psychedelic substances like marijuana and like
Yeah.
psilocybin mushrooms.
Sure.
I haven't tried LSD or like
Well,
ayahuasca or any or DMT or
yeah.
anything.
Well, and it's funny because even like you're talking about like kind of like the medical and the brain and like that side of it. I personally don't have much knowledge on it, you know, of what happens either. But Strong Camps, you know, the guy that's part of like the Edo crew and everything,
Mm,
he actually I'll try and reference it and find it and send it to you. But he had a post a while, like a couple months ago, I think it was, about magic mushrooms microdosing and versus marijuana and working out. So like
mm.
microdosing working out versus like smoking and working out, and like some like medical benefits and like kind of some like, you know, like studied benefits and like, you know, test group stuff of like the differences. And he personally, I think, microdoses mushrooms when he works out, and I think he leans more towards that than the smoking, which
Yeah.
is something I've been interested in indulging into myself.
Yeah, I've had I may have been a couple, but certainly one experience of taking mushrooms and training that I vividly remember.
Yeah,
And it's crazy, man. Like I so I mean just I took, what would it be, maybe 2 grams. It wasn't a
sure,
huge amount. So for
sure.
context, for people listening, I
That
guess.
that still sounds quite a bit for like a
Oh
training
yeah,
session.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah, like I
yeah.
would be thinking like point 0.5,
Yeah, no, I wasn't microdosing.
point
I
0.4.
was I was going on a
You're bought
journey.
in. You're
Yeah,
bought in to the
yeah.
training journey.
And it was a day I didn't have any work. I didn't have any other responsibilities or obligations. So I took some mushrooms and I went to the gym, and it was a pretty quiet, like, during the middle of the day. And the workout was like, I what I kept thinking was, I feel like a Superman. Or Super Saiyan is actually specifically what I kept
Sick,
thinking. It,
sick,
it felt
dude,
it
sick
felt
as
it felt
fuck.
like every one of my capacities that I'm aware of, like,
Yeah,
attention, focus, like agility, fluidity,
yeah,
being able
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
contract,
yeah.
all of these capacities it all felt like
There
they're
was like
all leveled
no
up.
inhibitions. Yeah,
Not only no inhibitions,
no cutoff.
they're all connected and they all leveled up. It felt like I was operating at
Yeah.
peak. I could do probably the best version of anything I needed to do at that moment. Um,
Did you test it?
so the workout was super intuitive. I was doing a lot of like, like
Movements.
locomotion movement stuff. I
Okay.
wasn't doing lifts.
Okay.
Because for safety as well, I figured that I could I could
Yeah.
I could lose my mind and drop a weight
Yeah.
on myself. But if I lose my mind while I'm doing a lizard walk, I'm going to fall 2 inches to the floor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
And just on that note too, like what I was gonna say, just I want to like pump it in quick. I think if you were gonna try it, please have some level of like
Safety
experience
first.
and safety first, but have some level of experience and understanding also, because I think it is something that is like it opens up pathways as you're saying and allows you to like level up, but you have to be able to
You should be
understand how
ready
to
for
let
it.
those
Like
exactly
I was doing type of training that I'd done lots before, so I'd already knew I wasn't learning anything new,
exactly
and I had taken mushrooms before, so I knew what to expect with that
exactly.
experience. So I just, there was the combination of the two was new, but neither individual. I isolated them, and now I was integrating.
Wicked.
And it felt like I had leveled up.
And then you're doing like movement stuff.
I'm doing movements. I was hitting a bag. I was hanging. I was swinging. I was sprinting. I was doing crawling.
Sprinting in the gyms.
There was a gym with a big long corridor that you could run down, do like maybe 20 meters or so.
Still sick.
I mean,
was it intuitive? Like, did you just get up and like sprint? Or was it like, hey, I'm going to sprint next? Or
no, I was like, I want to run.
Like Forrest Gump. I'm just going to start running.
So I feel like sprinting. I want to just like go. Like that just felt. So I've heard that, I don't know if this has been verified, but there's a theory that tribal cultures would often use, like the men specifically, before they would go out hunting, would take mushrooms because it increases things like depth perception, increases your sense of borders between objects. Like you can tell
light sensitivity, all these things.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, as you and I know, having done them together, it increases that connection with the body, and it brings up this very primal kind of animalistic, physical sense. And so that made a lot of sense to me as well, because as I'm moving around, I'm like, if I was like, if I was going to be in any state to go hunting, it would be this state. I would want to be in this state.
This is it. This is how I want to be.
Yeah, like I feel ready, like as ready as I'm going to be, at least.
Yeah.
And then I've heard, I don't know of anyone specifically, but I've heard that UFC fighters, that athletes will microdose on mushrooms before going out to a fight, and that does not surprise me in the slightest. And it's partly because they don't test for it, because it's not considered a performance enhancing substance, which may actually be the single biggest blind side of the fucking USADA and all these drug testing agencies, because this may actually be a legitimate performance enhancing substance. But for primal kind of physical, I mean, going out dancing, taking mushrooms, I would discover I learned how to dance using my hips by...
Dude, microdosing mushrooms and going out is like wonderful.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's like wonderful. I didn't take like crazy amounts and go out, but like microdosing mushrooms and going out is like a ridiculous feeling. Like you feel wonderful.
There doesn't seem to be any hangover. There doesn't seem to be any negative consequences.
I would bank on the opposite. I think from what we're studying, and again, like we've only read
therapeutic.
Like, early, it does, and in multifaceted ways.
It literally creates it facilitates neuroplasticity. It creates new.
How can you hate on something like that?
That helps create new connections in the brain. Because in Australia, it's because legislature all got bundled together in the 60s or something, where just all drugs are bad. Okay, like that was it. It was just all drugs banned.
Unfortunate, because it could help a lot of people.
Yeah, and we're finding that now. That you hear stories like people who are chronic smokers, addicted smokers, doing a mushroom trip and coming out of it and going cold turkey successfully from then on.
I actually never heard that. It's pretty sick.
Last I looked, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and there's been more research since, but there was sort of early studies on people taking mushrooms, and they would be asked about their experience, and consistently the vast majority of people would report that it was in the top like 3 most important experiences of their entire life, up there with having their child, holding their child for the first time.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like thoroughly.
Yeah, and so I don't know what the limits are. I'm sure all these things would have limits. I would say that I think that certain drugs probably wouldn't go great. For example, I know that there's been research into alcohol and training, like strength training specifically. And what's been found is that you can actually get pretty fucking drunk and still perform at like high levels, at normal, like at your own expected levels.
I think the recovery is a big issue though, no?
Exactly. It's because alcohol affects the quality of sleep, which affects your recovery. And so it has detrimental effects in the long run for that reason. But if you just want to like perform, I think it's going to affect your coordination with certain tasks at a certain point. But if you're just doing if you're having a few drinks and then going and doing some bench press and some squats, you're probably going to perform just as good. But again, it's not going to it's going to affect your recovery, which means you're not going to get the gains from actually doing all that work.
Exactly.
Like speed, cocaine. I would think that would be a fucking nightmare.
I would think it'd be, for some of those, it'd be like in that same realm of like alcohol, but with more detrimental like side effects of the next day. Like
Yeah.
I just don't think, like I think you might be able to perform, right? Because I think it's just stimulus,
Yeah.
right? So like you're super stimulated, but I think it's more like that recovery, like you're drained, like there's no way you could recover,
Yeah.
right? I think
It's also hard to say though with those drugs because a lot of it would come from the impurities or the at
sure,
all the whatever
I
it's cut
guess,
with.
yeah.
Like how who's running studies with people taking pure cocaine? You know,
Like some cartel somewhere.
I mean, yeah, they're probably just keeping it for themselves. You make more money. You make more money selling it than running the study.
Perfecto.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And people with ADHD who tend to get the opposite effect from stimulants like speed, like methamphetamines, may actually
yeah,
find it beneficial, right? Like you take Adderall, if you've got
sure.
ADHD and you take Adderall, that slows some people down and helps them focus.
Yeah.
So I guess for some it would be possible to take something like crystal
Well, yeah,
meth, you know.
I guess there's a lot of, yeah, I guess there's a lot of people that do take Adderall and stuff like that and work out.
Bro, so that's what I wonder. There must be so many people that, yeah, like we've seen people that are definitely like on coke or on something when they're in the gym, like dancing around
Yeah.
and going, like
I've
they're,
known people that have
yeah,
been at
yeah,
the,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
exactly. It,
Would I do it myself? Hell no. Mushrooms, yes. Smoking, I do.
yeah,
What the comparison I want to make in the gym and mushrooms though too is I find both do similar things, but back to that active and neutral, I find like weed is great. It helps you open up, but it keeps you a little bit more neutral.
mm,
I feel like mushrooms allows you to hit that active charge.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
an
so
interesting point.
you're benefiting from both. Don't get me wrong, but one just keeps you a little bit more neutral. So the reason why I wouldn't hunt on weed is like, don't get me wrong, I feel like I'm more agile and better, but it's kind of like in that more of like that freedom way. It's like,
Dude,
oh,
I'm gonna go into
like
such weird,
that mushroom is like that, like you're still like loose, but it's like there's a little bit of like more of like that goal oriented versus like the chilling
but
out.
here are some connections that may just be totally fucking fantastical and fictitious,
Sure.
like totally made up. I'm going into
Yeah.
utter woo-woo territory here. I do not actually believe this, but you talk about marijuana being a neutral element. Well, if the neutral element is the feminine, well, all weed that you smoke is a female plant, right?
Wow.
All
That's
weed,
true, right?
all the
Because
buds that you smoke are female.
all the buds that grow are female.
Yeah.
And then mushrooms, are they male? Do we know?
I don't know that. That's what I was wondering. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't make that. I couldn't tie it all together, at least with my limited knowledge on it. But yeah, like
Yeah.
Like Mary Jane is literally like it's apt
Yeah, yeah,
because
Mary Jane.
it's actually
It's a female.
it's a female plant that you're smoking.
That's so
Um,
funny.
so yeah, and mushrooms and weed are a match made in heaven. Like they're a marriage.
They
They go
are.
really well together. They complement each
I
other really
really
nicely.
wonder, fun guy.
There you go.
No, I'm joking. I'm
There you go.
joking. Definitely not the right one. But I do wonder if like, the magic mushrooms we have, if like it is like a male female thing in that regard. It has to be.
Yes.
There's got to be like cross, unless it's like unless they're what, asexual, was it called, or
Or hermaphroditic or something. They can just
yeah,
change their own
something.
sex. I don't know. I
I
don't
think
know.
seahorses and male seahorses impregnate themselves or something weird like that. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like a lame
something weird.
existence. Sounds like you're missing out.
Yeah, I didn't even like the seahorse Pokemon.
Imagine if every time you jerked off, you got pregnant.
There'd be a lot more people on this planet.
There'd be a lot more abortions.
I think it would be normalized. I think there would be advertisements on fucking billboards.
Oh god.
There'd be an abortion clinic. You'd convenience store abortions, bro. They would figure out a solution to that ASAP.
Oh, it's crazy.
Hey, I think that's what jerking off is pre-abortion.
In a
Aborting
way,
before you
yeah.
have to abort, right?
In a way, in a way, certainly. Um, yeah, but I mean, like you said, this could be something that we probably come back to. You know, we'll bring it back
Sure, of course.
as it comes back up. But
Well,
uh,
because we consistently do it, so we're consistently learning new things, so we'll consistently
yeah,
talk about it.
I mean, for me, again, maybe a personality thing. What I really like about smoking in particular and training is I prefer it for some things. I maybe for strength elements, I prefer not to.
Sure.
If I'm really trying to get a lot of output, but if it's more movement based, like spine waves,
Yeah.
locomotion, more just technical skill based stuff, coordination, rhythm, then it just, I don't know, it opens something up. It
Just for the smoking aspect, you're
inspires.
saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It
See,
just,
funny you say that though when we talk about experience, right? I personally feel like I can PR when I smoke,
oh yeah.
and I do, and I
But
have.
does it matter how much or what strain?
Now, no. Well, yeah, indica, yeah,
Yeah.
indica for sure, indica. Sativa, not so much. Like I actually don't. I dislike sativa just in general,
You
and
know,
even sativa dominant hybrids.
I read something on a subreddit recently where someone was saying, can anyone explain why it just seems like a common pattern that as we, as I age, I prefer indicas more?
I don't know. I didn't even know that was a pattern.
Yeah, neither did I. And then I'm like, I mean, that's what I've experienced is what you experience. Um,
Maybe it has to do with amount and receptors and stuff like that.
I don't know. Well, I mean, one of the answers was, look, nothing you get is a pure sativa or indica anyway.
Sure,
They're all
sure.
hybrids, but
Maybe it's a placebo effect.
or maybe it's got something to do. Maybe indica sativa is not strictly the right way to look at it, but because I'll say maybe it's to do with terpenes, like some other compound.
Sure.
But maybe it does still correlate. Like maybe sativas do tend to be like this, and indicas tend to be like that. But
Yeah,
you're going to have exceptions. I don't know.
sure. I've
But
had
yeah,
some exceptions. You know, we've smoked over
exactly.
many times. I've had, not that often, but I've had some exceptions where generally I get an indica. I know it's an indica by the way it smokes. I've had
Yeah,
some times where I get an indica and I'm like, uh,
yeah, yeah,
seems like a bit more like sativa, but
yeah, exactly.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, it's I really enjoy it. I mean, I've lifted heavy too, but I think what I find is that if I smoke too much and then go lift heavy
yes,
after the first set or two, when that sort of neural fatigue is starting to set in,
yeah,
then that gets amplified by being high, and then I feel
sure,
really kind of like drained,
lethargic and stuff.
very
Yeah,
lethargic very quickly.
yeah.
Whereas,
Amount does make a difference. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
for sure it does. 100%.
But yeah, if I'm going to do something, like if I'm going to do some balance, if I'm going to go stand on a rail and like, if I'm going to do some spinal waves, or if I'm going to
Yeah.
do some juggling, or practice handstands, even like mobility, man, being able to just
Yes.
hang out in end range positions and really be able to tune in on that. And I don't know, it's just something about it. Just
There's something there, man. I know.
yeah,
I agree with you.
yeah.
There's something there. If you're comfortable, try in small doses first. I think mushrooms always microdose, to be honest, for the most part.
Yeah, safety. I mean, we're not going to give advice. It's just like safety first, and you do you.
Yeah,
But it's like this is our experience, and yeah, we
enjoy
find a
it.
lot of benefit from it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
benefit at the end of the day too, right? It's not just like, hey, I enjoy it, so I'm gonna take detriment to it. It's like, we take our training like fairly seriously, that like we wouldn't do it if we didn't see some sort of benefit to it.
and I think you'd be surprised how many people who train smoke,
Yeah.
as well
I think
internationally.
we'd be surprised how many people smoke in general.
Yeah. Um, now, just to touch on the drawbacks, I think one of the biggest risks is psychological dependence, or
Sure.
habitual dependence, where you can
But
no longer work out without smoking,
But the
for
one thing I
example.
will say, even workout wise, there's so much of that I think, and I do think this is a problem with smoking in general, though, creating that dependence for doing like lots of stuff with smoking. So
Yeah.
I don't want to take that away from it, but in the gym context of the gym world, I think there's a lot of dependence on stuff of like, people have to take my fish oils every day. There's benefits to it.
My pre-workout, my
Not yeah,
post-workout.
it's 100% pre-workout. I was a pre-workout guy too,
Yeah.
right? Where I was like, dude, I cannot work out if I don't have pre-workout. I went
Or
to the gym,
whether it's a
I'll
formulated
leave.
pre-workout.
I'll find a fucking Popeyes, and
Exactly.
I'll get the pre-workout and get it.
Whether it's a formulated pre-workout or if it's just coffee. For me, it's coffee. It's like
Yeah, now it is coffee. Yeah,
if I don't have a coffee in the morning, I'm not convinced that I can train. You know?
or do anything in life.
Yeah, or live. I
Yeah,
may as well
I,
just
I
go back to
generally
bed and
have
start
coffee
again.
before I generally have coffee before I even eat. I don't eat for like a couple hours after I have my coffee.
Yeah, yeah, I do that too. And now I'm reading shit that's saying you shouldn't do that, so I'm just ignoring it and drinking my coffee
Bullshit. I
anyway.
feel great. I look good. What are you gonna
So,
argue?
what I was arguing, this is what I actually think I found to be true anyway, is um, it was saying if you feel jittery and anxious when you have coffee, you should have it with food. And
Sure.
that's a good general rule anyway. And I find first coffee of the day, no food, fine. Second coffee of the day, no food, getting the jitters.
100%. I agree with that. One coffee are great.
Yeah. So maybe it depends, but yeah. Well, caffeine. That's another one. Like that's another
Drug.
example. Drug.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of where it gets sketchy, right? Because if you're gonna say that all drugs are bad, then well, what about coffee? What about tobacco, which would actually be is it nootropic? Is that the name? Like strict tobacco is known to enhance like mental clarity and performance.
Of course, yeah. Bro, have
Yeah.
you ever smoked the first cigarette?
What's that?
Have you ever smoked the first cigarette? You're like messed up, bro.
Well,
Like, you get messed up. Like the first cigarette you ever smoke, like your brain is fried. Like you feel like lightheaded, everything.
Well, so I think it's if you can isolate the tobacco from the cigarette, because the cigarette's got like nicotine, or it's got other other compounds in there. Yeah. But if you get strict tobacco, apparently that's got like a lot of performance enhancing benefits, a lot of health benefits to it, but it's just harder to get.
Really?
Yeah, strict tobacco, like chew on it, like chewing tobacco, or especially, yeah. I mean, it's not like I think that's what baseball players use, right? Like it gives you that stimulation, like caffeine does. It gives you that mental kind of focus and alertness,
which would make sense too. Yeah, craziness.
But yeah, it's like it's all balance in all things. It's a very individual thing, but just something that we want to kind of introduce here, and maybe we'll continue to bring up in the future.
Yeah.
But I mean,
all in all, like everything our podcast, it's just try it. See if it works for you. That's kind of what we're getting at the end of the day. That's not necessarily with like just with smoking, or even, I'm not telling you to go try that, but like anything, like when you're doing something, just try it. Put a healthy effort in, an honest effort in, and see if it's for you.
Well, I think that just about covers it for today.
That's it.
I think that's good. That felt awesome. That's a good chat.
That was a good chat, Benjamin.
Until next time for episode, what would that be? 7?
6.
This is episode 6. Next week we'll have. That's what I'm saying. 7. And then
8.
And then
now we're just getting into good counters.
And then on our way to magical number 10.
That's it. That's all.
So thanks for listening. This has been great. I've been Ben.
I've been Steven. I have to say it like that every time now.
And then we're out. Until next week, it's been the Meditative Monkeys podcast.
Over and out.